All right. Well, thank you for joining us this afternoon, morning for some of you. Um, we are going to keep this relatively brief, but you are here today because you're interested in submitting a proposal for the Just Economy Conference this coming spring. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about um, what we are looking for in proposals, a little bit about the conference itself for those of you who are less familiar. And then I am hoping to hold some time for some questions as well. Please go ahead and share questions in the chat or in the Q&A. I will come back to those as we go along. Yeah, and thanks for joining us. So the Just Economy Conference will be taking place in Washington, D.C., April 2nd through 4th. This is the place to be for folks who are trying to create a just economy. It's one of the most diverse conferences of its type. We have community organizations across the country that come. These include folks that are building housing, doing financial literacy, lending to small businesses, advocating at the local, state, and national level for policies that make it easier for folks to access economic opportunity in their communities. I like to say that if you're working towards the Just Economy, there's a place for you at NCRC and at the Just Economy Conference. It's a fantastic jam-packed couple of days. We'll start this year with our first in-person Hill Day since the pandemic. We're very excited to come back to that rhythm and take our members up to the Hill, followed by a couple of days of breakout sessions and keynote sessions spread over 2 very full days, a handful of receptions. Breakout sessions will be about 75 minutes long. We'll probably have about 35 of those. Yeah, so it'll be a exciting time. There's a mix of content at our conference. Some of it is a little bit more policy focused, both federal policy, but also local and statewide. We have a lot of content there for practitioners. In addition to NCRC's members, you'll likely see representatives from financial institutions. About 20% of our conference attendees are from the financial sector. That might be from lending, mortgage finance, philanthropy, compliance, etc. We also have a significant portion of our attendees that represent academic institutions, the federal agencies that govern our economy, like the OCC, Federal Reserve, FDIC, CFPB, HUD, DOJ, etc. That's just a little bit of a picture of our conference, and we really do see this as a chance to move, touch, and inspire the folks that are in this work, and a chance to equip them with new ideas that they can take back to their communities. You may have seen already the call for proposals language. I'm going to link that here because there really is some great language to share or to get you started thinking about what type of content we're looking for. And that is now in the chat. We are looking for new ideas that will have an impact at the community and national level, solutions to move forward a just economy. And the key word there is solutions. A lot of times, for a lot of us, when we talk about our work in different spaces, we first have to define the problem, right? Oh, did you know that our entire economic system is built on bias and things that we're trying to adjust? Did you know that not everyone has the same access to opportunity? And we've got to really define that. At our conference, you're talking to folks who, generally speaking, I see that I did not send that link. Let's see, there we go. That should do it. Thanks for those of you in the chat who made sure to ask for that. At our conference, generally speaking, folks understand a lot of the same problems that you're working with. And what they're really looking for, and which is the much tougher work, is solutions. It might be one solution, it might be a handful of different approaches. A lot of the problems that we're tackling in our communities at the national level are complex, and there's a lot of different approaches, and we need a lot of different tools in our toolboxes to be able to address them. So those solutions are really what we're looking for: new ideas, things that people can use to change the flow of capital in their communities. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking specifically about speakers. Speakers are not necessarily required with submission proposals, but we strongly encourage you to at least have lightly discussed your proposal with potential speakers, knowing that things change, knowing that it's sometimes hard to pitch a session if you don't know if it's actually happening. But we really find that the who matters just as much as the what for the content at our conference. Speakers make or break a good conversation. Some of the things that we look for when we're evaluating speakers are diversity. We work very hard to make sure that our programming reflects our audience in terms of racial, gender, and geographic diversity, and also important perspectives. Again, the problems that we're trying to tackle are complex, and so we're interested in multiple perspectives on how to solve for those. And so we'll look to see, are different speakers speaking from different perspectives, bringing forward different solutions? Will there be any interesting tension in this session? We also are looking to make sure that the speakers that are in the proposal know more about the topic than their audience, that they have real practical experience, that they are experts in their field, and that their experiences are replicable in other settings. This isn't just a really cool idea that worked in one really unique setting, but that it's something that even if it's not something that someone could copy and paste, that someone could take really practical things away from that and bring it back to their work. We also are looking for moderators. A lot of times we start, I find that folks very frequently think first about their speakers and then about their moderator, but I would encourage folks to think about their moderator as a really key and important role to really draw out the speakers, to bring some continuity to the session, and really frame the conversation in a way that's going to be relatable for the audience, and really allow the speakers to really showcase their expertise. You want to think about the format that's going to draw the best from your speakers. Think about ways to engage the audience, whether that's breaking up presentations to allow for Q&A throughout, asking the audience some questions, etc. One thing to note about speakers is that while speakers and session leads, which would be anyone whose proposal we've accepted, do get complimentary access to the full conference, we do not, as a practice, offer hotel or travel stipend or honorarium. We do have a separate scholarship process to ensure that leaders from communities that otherwise wouldn't be able to access a conference like this can do so. But that is separate from our programming budget and work. In terms of process, if the link in the chat is also the link where you submit your proposal. Make sure that you use an email address to create an account that you actually check. We have had the occasion where we've tried to accept someone's proposal and they found out weeks later because they a spam, an email that they use for other things got auto-filled in there, and they didn't realize that we were trying to reach them. Our timeline, you may have noticed last year we did something a little bit different. In November of last year, we put some of the sessions that we thought were interesting, but that we weren't sure, will this resonate with our audience? Which ones, we're having a hard time deciding between these, and we let NCRC's audience and followers vote. And we found that to be really successful, really engaging, and got people excited about the conference. So we will be doing that again this year. Not all sessions that make it into the conference will be part of that. We try to keep it, somewhat streamlined so as to not overwhelm folks with too many things to pay attention to. But that may be something that your proposal is selected to participate in November. And then we will be circling back with final decisions in December. Along the way, I might reach out with additional questions or suggestions. We really work to take original proposals and really think about how to maximize the impact of those at our conference. And so, be prepared for some questions from me. Frequently, it's either scoping a session down or scoping it out. Trying to get the exact right level of scope for a session. And I should have led, as I was talking about a timeline, with a very important date, which is October 20th, the deadline for submissions. So we've got 10 days. I know many of y'all wanted to make it to this conversation first before you went ahead and put your proposals together. You've got a little bit of time, but not so much that it can slip to the back burner. After sessions are approved, that'll be the time to invite and confirm speakers. We will work very hard with you to make sure that we get your sessions, the descriptions and everything ready for marketing purposes. One of the things that then becomes very urgent for us is getting your speakers confirmed. We are going to rely on you as the person with the relationships and who most deeply understands what the session is trying to accomplish to invite your speakers and confirm them and make sure that they've got all the information. But we'll be here to support. And as you get your speakers confirmed and registered, we will be turning around and creating marketing materials so that you and your speakers can promote their participation in the event to their networks. Questions along the way for right now can come to me. Some of you may remember Kaylee Harcrow from our last conference. She is still at NCRC, but recently moved to another position. So I'm currently hiring for someone who will work with me on the breakout sessions for our conference. So you may be introduced to someone else along the way. But in the meantime, definitely come to me with questions about your proposal or your session as we lead up to the conference. And so that is pretty brief. I probably spoke a little bit too quickly, but I'm going to take a minute and look through some of the questions that I see have come in here and answer those. I see a great question about the minimum and maximum people on a panel besides the one moderator. That is really excellent. What I would say is that if you have more than 3 speakers, you've got to have a very clear vision for how you're going to use those speakers in a 75-minute panel and have audience engagement. We have had sessions where we just needed a diversity perspective and we end up with more than that. But the feedback is always that those speakers didn't quite get a chance to share everything that the audience would have wanted to hear. I would say it's very uncommon for us to have a single speaker on a session. Sometimes we can have a really powerful session with 2 people who are having a dialogue, but one person typically ends up being both not as engaging from an audience perspective, and it's hard to get the right balance of perspectives in a one person session. The panel sessions are 75 minutes. The keynotes, we program those a little bit differently. They're frequently over a meal and with some other programming concerns around them. Happy to have some follow-up conversations about that. But we typically wouldn't have one person on the stage for more than 20 minutes for those. Yeah, a question about Hill Day. So this is our opportunity to take NCRC members up to the Hill to meet with their members of Congress. So we do that by state and set up meetings for folks. And this is, again, open to NCRC organizational members. And we spend the day having meetings and discussing NCRC's policy agenda with various offices on Capitol Hill. Yeah. So there, yeah, depending on the state and how many members are in that state and what the relationships are like with those offices, one person might have 5 different meetings on the Hill, one person might have one. It's a little bit varied. It's quite the choreography, but really a very powerful moment for our members. Monica, that's a great question about, 2 great questions about the topics that have been particularly popular. The way I like to think about this, and this is going to be a little bit of a backing into your question. But as I mentioned at the top, this is a conference with a very diverse audience. And so within that, there's a number of different segments. And so there's as opposed to, a conference where everyone's focused on the same thing and everybody's interested in the same topics. I like to think of our sessions as targeting specific audience segments, and sometimes more than one segment, right? And so you might have a session that's really attractive to folks that are doing fair lending work and that are crunching data around HMDA analysis, and that's going to be really attractive to those folks. You might have another session that's really attractive to folks that are building affordable housing. So thinking about those audience segments is I like to try to puzzle piece different pieces together. Every year there are a handful of topics that are exciting to different groups that are unique. I think one of the ones that was surprising to me personally last year, we had a session on access to broadband and the impacts on a just economy, and that was not one that I was expecting to resonate quite so much across so many different audience segments, but I was glad that we put that one up for a vote, and folks were really excited about it and showed up en masse. I would say things that have a mix of the practical and aspirational are really a good fit for our conference. And then Monica, your question about a focal theme for this year's conference, there are some kind of sub themes that I'm paying attention to that I think might emerge as we go into this year's conference. Obviously, one of the things that we're watching as an organization is what happens to the new CRA rule. We're likely to have some content around that. What exactly that looks like might depend on the timing of the new rule and what's in it. But that may inform some of our content this year. And there's some particular areas within that that are significance for our attendees. Let's see. I see a handful of questions that I think I can tie together related to recruiting speakers. So my recommendation would be that as you're putting together your proposal, that you're at least letting the speakers that you have in mind know that you're doing so, and get a sense from them of, are they available in April? Are they interested? Do they think someone else in their organization might be a better fit because they've worked on something specific related to that, et cetera. It doesn't necessarily need to be a hard and fast, great, ready to book my travel. But we strongly recommend that you at least open that conversation. And we do expect session leads to be the ones that are recruiting speakers, since you're the ones who have the deepest understanding of what you're trying to accomplish with your session, and hopefully also the relationships to be able to leverage there. In some cases, NCRC might look at a proposal and say, wow, there's some really good conversations in here. But we're aware of someone or a perspective that we think would really add to that. And so we might partner with you to try to flesh that out a little bit. And then in terms of finances, speakers and session leads do not pay registration for our event, but nor do we cover travel or other expenses. We don't offer honorariums. Um, and then we're looking to accept probably around 35 sessions this year. Um, I'm trying to remember, some years we're able to record a handful of breakout sessions. I don't actually remember if we did or not for this past year. So let me follow up on that. I know we have a handful that are recorded, but I would need to they're on our website someplace, but they might not be super easy to find. All right, let's see. Yvonne, I don't think that we recorded this past year, but I know that we have in the past. So if it's helpful to you to see something that we've recorded in the past, I can follow up and send you a couple of examples. Let's see. Alexander, that's a great question. Is there the potential for proposed panels to be combined after the submissions are done? Yes, this is something that I frequently look for when I see a kernel of a good idea. Is kind of what can I pair that with? What other session proposals kind of talk to that one? And so there might be a little bit of matchmaking that happens there. You're also welcome to collaborate and co-author a proposal if you've got some ideas in mind around that. Love this question. Are there topics that we're not interested in for 2024? I do think that looking at the previous year's sessions and kind of being mindful of what those conversations were. We're not, it's very rare for us to do an exact replica of a previous session. Occasionally there's a topic that's so important to us and that has evolved a lot in the last year that there's something really new to say about it. And there are areas where where we're going that there's going to be meaningful updates. But in general, and I believe that the last year's program and session descriptions are available on our website. If not, then I'll include a link to that in the follow-up email from this. And those are helpful both to see kind of what we're looking for, but also that question of what we're not interested in as it was stated. You know. Wonderful question. How many attendees? Overall, last year we had 1,200 folks at the Just Economy Conference total. I would say that it's fair to expect around 100 people in a breakout session. And no, we have not yet started confirming keynote speakers. We'll be announcing those later this year. Yeah. All right, I'm noticing that the questions are starting to come in at a little bit of a slow rate. It's a little bit like watching popcorn pop. I'm gonna wait just another minute to see if there are any others that I can answer here. But as I said earlier, I'm available to answer additional questions. Monica, I've actually thought about that a little bit myself. I think it would have to be it might depend on the session and how what the practical application would be for different member constituencies. But I'd be interested in playing around with that a little bit to see, um, yeah, who we could make that conversation relevant for. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to bring us to a close. I promised to be brief, and I think we're right at the half hour. I want to thank you guys again. And I will just close by saying that my criteria for breakout sessions for our conference is whether they're compelling enough for someone to get on a plane to come to that session. And it's amazing to me that NCRC has been able to deliver that to folks. And it is because of folks like you who are bringing some of the best ideas and the best work. Um, you know, the stuff that happens at our conference is the tip of the iceberg. It's the result of a lot of hard work that's going on throughout the whole year. And so I'm just really grateful that y'all are willing to share your work with our members and our constituents at the Just Economy Conference. So yeah, really grateful for all the work that y'all are doing, and look forward to talking to y'all more as we go through this process. All right. Thanks so much.